Okay, so it looks like the great Deutschland would like to ban some ad blockers. At least that's what I've read. And so, yeah, it sounds a bit weird, right? Because, when you really think about it too, right? You kind of just be like, why would you want to ban ad blockers? Unless you live in like those like really, really, really authoritarian countries where it's like they want you to, only you got to see our propaganda and blah, blah, blah. Then yeah, don't ban ad blockers. But it's just weird. But we're gonna get into that case shortly. But I just want to remind you guys that actually the FBI recommends ad blockers. Now, of course, Wayback Machine had to give me a hand with this, but it says here, cyber criminals impersonating brands using search engine advertisement services to defraud users. The FBI is warning the public that cyber criminals are using search engine advertisement services to impersonate brands and direct users to malicious sites that host ransomware and steal login credentials and other financial information. Pretty standard stuff, right? But, if you go to the methodology, right, and they go to tips to protect yourself, well, want to do this one with me together? It says here, the FBI recommends individuals take the following precautions. Use an ad blocking extension when performing internet searches. Most internet browsers allow a user to add extensions, including extensions that block advertisements. These ad blockers can be turned on and off within a browser to permit advertisements on certain websites while blocking advertisements on others. So, alright, this video's got it done. See ya! Jokes aside, yeah, so it's just interesting that, that you have the FBI will tell you to, install ad blockers. I mean, they're very useful because it really filters out a lot of the scam ads you might get. Like, for example, you don't need red shoe or blue chew, okay, guys? I know how bad you need it, but you don't need that kind of stuff. You also don't need whatever stuff is going on. And the crazy part about advertising, too, is that you guys have to remember that when it comes down to advertisements, everything that is done is literally deliberate to psychologically make you need to get the item that, they're advertising. So, say, for example, you need to do weights for your gym. If you keep searching up weights, what's going to appear? Weights. If you need, I don't know, what else is there people like to buy? If you want a certain, I don't know, package for a package meal or something, which you're going to get package meals. So it's just interesting how here we are when it comes down to advertisements and how they're very much tailored towards like you as a person. And guess what? It is what it is. And on top of that too, you just have to pay a little bit of money and then you get a lot of people seeing all your ads going everywhere. It's not like these scammers are paying for like massive, blocks of television or something. So anyways, that's where we're at now. So I do want to take a look here, and this is actually from Mozilla Firefox, another browser. It says here, is Germany on the brink of banning ad blockers? User freedom, privacy, and security is at risk. So quite the title to bring into. So here we have, across the internet, users rely on browsers and extensions to shape how they experience the web, to protect their privacy, improve accessibility, block harmful or intrusive content, and take over what they see. But a recent ruling from Germany's Federal Supreme Court risks turning one of these essential tools, the ad blocker, into a copyright liability, and in doing so, threatens the broader principle of user choice online. Pretty crazy, right? Imagine you are watching television and you go to the kitchen for a snack during an ad break, or you press the fast forward button to some ads while listening to a podcast, or perhaps you get a newspaper delivered to your house. You see that it includes as a special section made up of hallucinated AI content, so you drop the inset into the trash before taking the rest of the paper inside. Were these acts of copyright infringement? Of course not. But if you do something like this with the browser extension, a recent decision from the German Federal Supreme Court suggests that you did infringe copyright. This misguided logic risks user freedom, privacy, and security. So, and of course, if you go down a bit more, it tells you about why you should have ad blocking on. And I already told you some reasons, okay? But the biggest thing is that for people to ever phish your information, and I'm sure you've probably taken a cybersecurity course at your job, or you've been fed this, like, what's the term, like ad nauseum. But regardless, I'm going to tell you guys now, the way they get your stuff is literally, you get an email, you get a link or something, and it brings you to a specific area. And that area is where they go and they snag all your stuff. They snag all your information, they snag your credentials, and that's when they use it. And for instance, one example is like, you have an urgent email. I need to get this out of my account. You need to pay this amount of money. Oh, guess what happens? You pay that amount of money, and yeah, guess what happens next? You end up getting, your stuff taken, and they ended up taking more money than they asked for. So that's something that ad blocking can really significantly reduce. Now, I don't know if I can find any stats on this stuff. I'll probably post some up as I'm talking, but it's such a big help. So I don't understand why like this would be a copyright infringement. But let's take a peek, because Firefox actually linked us to something here. And it talks about here the legal dispute over the admissibility of Adblocker under copyright laws entering another round in the long-running case between Axel Springer, Verlag, and Eyeo GmbH. Adblocker Plus, the Federal Court of Justice has overturned the decision of the lower court and returned the case to it for a new hearing. Springer has been taking action against Adblocker for years. After an attempt to ban Adblocker based on competition law finally failed in 2018, Springer's lawyers turned to copyright law with little success so far. So clearly, this Springer individual has been pretty much at war with Adblock. It's kind of like them and the r/YouTube, just at war with Adblock all the time. That was a little jab. So it says here Springer is allowed to do it again after the Hamburg Regional Court, the Hamburg Higher Regional Court, also ruled in 2023 that changing the display of a website in the browser data does not constitute a reworking of the code that would violate copyright law. Springer had appealed against the OLG ruling in the BGH. Thursday's ruling by the BEH is at least a stage victory for the publishing giant. The media group can now pursue its claims for injunctive relief and damages, among other things. The BGH does not consider the judgment of the lower court to be sufficiently substantiated, based on the findings made by the Higher Regional Court of Hamburg. And infringement of the copyright protection area of a computer program cannot be denied. According to the BGH, the Higher Regional Court must now hear the case again and take a closer look at how a browser works. So if you're not really understanding what's going on here, essentially it's like this, right? So when you code a website, okay, whatever you do, your JavaScript, you do your HTML, you do your CSS, whatever, okay, what people will do most of the time is that they will basically have like a copyright protection against the code, so you can't modify any of the code being being used. However, the way that Adblock works, and I'm trying to remember exactly how it works, but going off my vague memory, and if I got it correct, I'll correct it, but it's like this. So basically, the Adblock will go take like certain, not permissions, but will take certain like attributes or something inside of your code, and it's going to scan user data it's going to scan the data to see, what is coded as an advertisement, and then that essentially takes it down. So and essentially just blocks anyway. That's what it does. So if you have something like Brave browser, this does it on a massive scale. Or if you have something like, I don't know, was it LibreWolf, the Firefox alternative? Like, yeah, that's another one that also does ad blocking built into the site or built into the browser itself. So basically your browser is going to go in and find stuff that could be an ad, and it just blocks it immediately. But yeah, that's essentially my remembering of how it works, but it has been some time. And so here it says, how does a browser work? So if we just go straight to the bottom of this, it says here, the BGH was also guided by a decision of the European Court of Justice concerning the copyright rule of certain cheats for computer games, after the ECJ found that cheats do not infringe copyright as long as they do not touch the code itself. The BGH also followed this in the proceedings by Sony against the German cheat provider Detel. And so that's a whole different case, a whole different can of worms entirely, but that's where we are at now. And of that. And so, yes, as long as it's not touching the code, that's basically you're copyrighted. Because it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Because, for example, if you write a code a certain way and it's really, really efficient, you don't want someone to go and copy and pasting that on their own website. Even if you write something that you want people to use, you're going to write it as, okay, let me protect this. And so people want to use it, I can use it or whatever. And if people want to just take it and steal it, then, you can't let them steal it. That's why copyright's in the first place. So that's why they went this angle. But it turns out that in 2023, it didn't go so well. But sadly, it might be a bit worse. So moving right along, we have here the recent court ruling is the latest development in a legal battle between publisher Axel Springer and Eyeo, the maker of Adblock Plus, that has been winding its way around the German legal system for more than a decade. The litigation has included both competition and copyright claims. Until now, Eyeo has largely prevailed, and the legality of Adblockers has been upheld. Most significantly, in 2022, the Hamburg Appeal Court ruled that Adblock Plus did not infringe the copyright of websites, but was merely facilitating a choice by users and how they wish their browser to render the page. Unfortunately, on July 31st, the German Federal Supreme Court partially overturned the decision of the Hamburg Court and remanded the case for further proceedings. The BGH called for a new hearing so that the Hamburg Court can provide more detail regarding which part of the website, such as bytecode or object code, is altered by ad blockers, whether this code is protected by copyright, and under what conditions the interference might be justified. And so, anyway, so that's basically the gist of it. So I kind of want to take a peek into the actual cases themselves, the ones that got, that had to get overturned. Because it's not as simple as, just being like, well, it's like, it touched the code and blah, blah, blah. It's more like we have to see exactly what happened. So we're going to go to the first one here, which talks about Adblockers, so judgment of July 31st, 2025. And it says you're an operator of several online portals contested against the distributor of a browser plugin designed to suppress advertisements on websites. So how the ad blocker works. So I mentioned it earlier, but let's see how much I got right. The ad blocker interferes with data structures generated by the browser in a user's RAM after fetching and loading the HTML file. It alters the object structure, the DOM node tree, as well as the formatting structures CSOM used by the website, preventing elements recognized as advertisements from appearing on a certain screen. This happens either by preventing ad content from being retrieved from the ad service or by loading it into memory without displaying it. So, sounds like a bunch of jargon. Like I said earlier, it basically goes and fetches for stuff. And so once it finds like whatever is identified as an ad, it's going to be like, okay, either it's going to be coded as do not display, or it's going to be, it just goes straight to your memory, which is, it's still there technically, but you're just not going to see it. So pretty clever way around it. So if you look at the copyright infringement through interference with protected code, the BGH held that the exclusive right to modify a computer program under 69 number 2 first sentence of the German Copyright Act and the exclusive reproduction right under 69 number first sentence URHG may be infringed if the browser and its engines are not controlled via object code, but by bytecode from which the browser's virtual machines generate object code. That bytecode or the code generated from it may be protected as a computer program, and an ad blocker that alters this code is in the course of reproduction may infringe the exclusive right associated with it. So, what's the decision, you may ask? The decision says here, the BGH referred the case back to the appellate court for a new hearing and decision, so that it can clarify which parts of the website, bytecode or object code, is affected, whether it is protected by copyright, and under what conditions the interference may be justified. So essentially they're very like, all right, gotta go back again. All right, it's possible, so you gotta do it again, which is what we're at now. And of course there's another one with the cheat software, but we're just gonna leave that one alone because it's just basically, it's kind of a rehash of the same thing. So we won't really look into that. But so yeah, that is where we're at in terms of ad blockers. It's pretty insane when you look at it because a lot of people will be very like, very controversial, but from what it looks like, what's his face? The person who's trying to put this in or trying to get this rid of it, it's mostly like a competition kind of thing. Like Springer really, really, really doesn't want ad blockers, mostly because it infringes upon his market. So he's going to be going to court over and over and over again. And so, what are possible ramifications for this? We'll wait and see. But I want to take a quick look at China because China actually technically has ad blockers banned. Well, not technically, it does have them banned. So let's take a peek at what China says. And so keep in mind when I'm talking about China, okay, they have their own, they actually, when you think about it, in terms of their internet, they live in their own universe. Like they have their own YouTube, they have their own, I don't know, probably on Facebook. I think it was called like Billy or something like that. That's basically their YouTube. And so when I talk about that, it's a whole different like ball game. So let's take a peek here. And it says, Article 16. Internet platform operators shall employ measures to prevent and stop unlawful advertisements in the course of their provision of internet information services and obey the following programs. So as you can see here, that's really what. So if you go, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so what's the one we're most interested in? Well, The one that we're the most interested in is actually number one. And so it says record and store the true identity information of users with their information services to publish advertisements with this information recording and storage period at least 3 years from the date on which provision information services in concludes. So, you're supposed to actually technically keep it there. You're supposed to keep it there for like 3 years and then you get rid of it. But, when it comes down to it, that's the law in China, okay? But like I said, Germany's more connected to the more other parts of the world, but China lives on its own bubble. So naturally, that's what you're going to get when it comes down to stuff like this. But what if I told you that, as far as I know, okay, so as far as I know, okay, there's still ways around this whole ban. So you can still use Adblock, but, in China, but, you just got to be more careful as, Winnie the Pooh might arrest you for it. But anyways, here in terms of that. So when I really think about this, when it comes down to it, the reason why I'm a bit cautious about this whole ordeal is just because when something happens in one part of the world and it affects everywhere else, like for instance, the Online Safety Act literally just went live and it's been affecting everywhere else. So, Wikipedia's been losing their battles and all that. And so, which is why I have to be very cautious. So, for example, if Germany's banning ad blockers, it's just going to push the needle a bit more into the direction of pro censorship and pro, controlling the users, which is already happening as it is. I mean, I'm pretty sure in some places like where you can work from home, some places are trying to push back into, getting people back into the office. I'm not sure there was a lot of pushback, but you get the point. So, it feels like every part of the world is trying to control just every little aspect of it. So, the good part news is that, while I can't encourage you to break the law, I mean, is using an ad blocker so bad? I'll leave the decision up to you. Only you can decide whether an ad block is worth it or not. Now, I personally do use them. I use Brave Browser because, I just don't like clutter on my screen. So when I don't see ads, that is a plus for me. But, for everybody else, it's a bit difficult. So, anyways, so that's it. So is Germany going to ban ad blockers? I'm going to go with... I'm gonna be optimistic. Probably not, but with this case ongoing, I'll have to wait and see. But decisions like these take a long time, so God knows if I'll be looking to this again in a few years. So, without further ado, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow my social notifications below. And that's it for today. This is the real outro. See ya.